Now there are 5 stages to a vetting, so just talk us through each stage and the difference between them.
Well, the first stage is basically a clinical examination in the stable, looking at the horse. But during that stage, I first of all ask the vendor questions about the horse. So basically I check whether or not there's been any medical history. I check whether or not there are any stable vices or anything that I should know about before we actually start doing the vetting. Often things like whether or not a horse is good to be clipped and things like that, they can be discussed. People like to know that when they're buying horses, whether or not there are problems. There's nothing worse than getting a horse home and finding it windsucks or weaves or something like that. Obviously I keep an eye out for those sort of things during my examination, try and keep an eye on the horse all the time and just observe and see what it does. Also during stage 1 of the examination, I actually I draw the horse, so I have a markings chart and I draw the whorls and the stars and any distinguishing features of the horse. So I record
So does that check against the passport then?
Yeah,
is that how you
exactly,
do that? Okay.
exactly. So I record basically the markings of the horse. That becomes part of the legal document. On there we also record our findings, and it records which horse I examined on the day. So if there's ever a dispute about whether I examined the right horse, that's the horse I examined. Like you said, we do compare it with the passport, so all horses now should have a passport. It is illegal to sell a horse without a passport. So we compare that with the markings chart in the passport. The other thing we do is we scan them and see whether they've got a microchip, because increasingly horses have now got microchips.
Yep.
So we check that the microchip that they have in the neck matches up again with the microchip that should be recorded in the passport.
Sure.
There should be a barcode strip in the passport with a series of numbers, and those numbers will be the same as the numbers that I read from the horse's neck.
Brilliant.
So after we've done all that, we then do a clinical examination, and the first thing I do is I look for evidence of things like surgical scars. So I feel around the throat and see whether or not they've got scars up in the throat region, which would indicate throat surgery. Look on their face and see whether they've had any scars to do with sinus surgery. We feel around the back of their fetlocks to see whether they've had any surgery associated with neurectomies, to see whether they've been denerved. Feel and see whether they've had a colic scar, that sort of thing. After that, we look for lumps and bumps like sarcoids, melanomas if it's a grey horse, all the sort of obvious stuff.
Yeah.
Basically, I aim, when I'm doing my pre-purchase examination, for my hands never really to leave the horse. I basically should feel all over the horse, because not only do you use your eyes to observe things, but you use your fingers to feel what the horse feels like, whether or not they've got muscle tension in their backs, whether or not they've got heat, whether they've got swelling. So I very carefully feel the tendons, ligaments and that sort of thing.
So even at this lower stage of the vetting, it's still a very thorough examination, isn't it? And
all
that's
the time.
done. So jump into the progression then to go to the 3, 4 and 5. How would you know what vetting you want for your horse, and where does it go now? What are the differences?
Well, the first stage is not complete at this point, because we have a foot examination, so we check out the feet, look in the eyes, look in the mouth, listen to the heart, listen to the chest, and that sort of thing. The second stage is an exercise test. So walk up, trot up on a concrete surface, flat in a straight line. That we do with flexion tests, which we can talk a bit more about later. The end of a second stage would be where we would finish if we were doing a 2-stage vetting, obviously.
Right.
So it doesn't give you any exercise testing in terms of response to exercise. So whether or not a heart condition becomes apparent, whether or not a respiratory problem becomes apparent during the exercise test. So the third stage would be usually ridden exercise, but if it's a young horse it might be lunged or even free-schooled.
Right.
But I prefer to see them ridden, because it's a horse that's going to be ridden. Unless it's a carriage driving horse or something like that, we would want to see the horse ridden, because it may exhibit different tendencies under saddle to the tendencies it would do on the lunge, particularly if it had a back problem, for example. So I'd like to see the horse doing what its intended job is, which is to be a riding horse. So I like to see them ridden.
Okay, let's just cut it there, and then we'll go into the 4 and 5 stages in one moment.